That's right. One of the newest parts of ISO 9001 2015 and related management standards, quality management standards, are the concepts of context and interested parties. What the heck are those, right? What does context mean when it comes to your company and compliance with a QMS standards, and who are interested parties? And I'll tell you, we've done a lot of ISO 9001 2015 webinars over the past few years, and I can tell you that there is for sure, especially recently with the new standard, confusion on just what or who constitutes an interested party. So with us today to shed a little light on context and interested parties is Pam Bethune, author of the article ISO 9001 2015, Establishing the Context of the Organization. Pam is the Automotive Regional Competency Manager for DECRA certification. Hi Pam, thanks for joining us.
Hi Mike and Dirk, how you doing?
Hey, pretty good. Well, let's just jump right in here. Are people really having a hard time understanding the context of the organization or interested parties? I mean, is that really an issue, kind of wrapping their heads around that? And if so, why do you think that is?
Well, yeah, our auditors have had several inquiries on this. It's a new concept. It hasn't been done before. So unlike the old standard, we don't have an extensive tribal knowledge about this, nor is there an extensive set of sanctioned interpretations or FAQs to help spell it out, to help us understand the clause, the expectations of how to deal with it. So we've had many questions on how to deal with it, how to understand it, how to interpret it, how to implement it, how to document it, and in particular, how will this be audited, both internally and externally? So people are confused and uncertain about what's going on. So they're looking for a little help.
Well, I know, Pam, we have a webinar on this that's coming up next week with you on Thursday, and I know we're going to go into it in a lot more detail then, but in a nutshell, maybe just give us the high level. What does context of the organization actually mean?
It means the environment that the business operates in, the technology, the culture, the laws and regulations, societal expectations, community, all of that stuff. I mean, if you think about it, a company that creates software in a totally virtual environment, and there are those, companies that provide engineering services versus companies that have a heavy physical presence, such as a stamping company or a plating company, all of those have very different environments that they operate in. The technology is different between those. The culture, if you have a facility that's in India or in Africa or in Europe or America or Asia, there's going to be a very different culture and cultural expectations, laws and regulations. Heck, if you cross a county line in the United States, you're going to get different regulations. Societal expectations. If you're a very small company, there may be very few societal expectations. If you're very, very large, there may be some. If you employ 6,000 people in a 20,000 person town, there are some very different expectations that your local society has. Community. If you're a plating company, people may be concerned about the trucks rumbling through their neighborhoods, or noise, or smells, or concerns about the environment, about a spill. So all of those come into play in what the context is. All of that constitutes the context. And they're very different for every company out there.
Well, and how important is understanding this concept, and how does it impact, I don't know, maybe how does it tie into, let's say, risk assessment, if any? I mean, that's a big topic in itself, risk assessment, but does context of the organization tie into that?
Absolutely. If you look at it, context is the very first part of the standard after the introduction. It is the very first clause. Therefore, logically, you should be looking at that and saying, why is this first? Why is it the first thing they talk about? And it's because it frames all the subsequent clauses. It helps create the boundaries of your quality management system, the scope, in other words. Working on the context allows the business to fully understand the groups that it impacts and that impact it. In other words, the interested parties. So the context helps you create the list, if you will, of interested parties. Interested parties, in turn, drive the risk assessment. So let's look at a company that's, say, in the automotive space. Well, context has to identify the National Highway Transportation Safety Agency as an interested party. It's part of the regulatory environment. So NHTSA is an interested party for that company. So that creates a potential risk. How is that risk then analyzed? Since it's been identified, once it's been analyzed, how do you deal with it appropriately? In the case of a services company, for example, personnel are a huge part of the context. I mean, they have to find them, hire them, train them, retain them. So employees are a very interested party, and there are risks associated with that have to be identified, analyzed, dealt with. So it drives directly into the risk assessment and as well as the scope. That's why it's the first clause in the standard, because it sets the frame, sets the boundaries for everything else that follows.
Well, thanks, Pam. I mean, that's probably one of the clearest explanations
I think so.
I've heard of it in a really long time. Mm-hmm. We're going to learn more about this in a webinar coming up next week. Pam, thanks for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it. If you want to learn more about context and interested parties, join us for the webinar, ISO Revisions, Context of the Organization, this coming Thursday, February 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. The webinar will be presented by Pam Bethune, just as we've seen here. Keep an eye on your email or your inbox for details about that. And also you can see, there's a link actually underneath the player page there as well. So Pam, thanks for joining us.
You're very welcome.
Okay. See you on Tuesday.
Thanks, Pam. Actually, it's Thursday.
Oh, Thursday. Sorry, see you on
yes.
Thursday. Right. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Pam.
Good night.
See you then.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye.